music. Did you know that I transformed an average male into a woman in just 3 weeks? After ignoring him, he became completely fixated on him and lacked confidence, had lavished hundreds on presents and sent her heartfelt messages non-stop, but she stayed aloof. However, after using the ideas I'm about to discuss, he had her vying for his attention all the time during my 7 years of psychology school. Through my study and counseling, I've seen thousands of people fail in their attempts to find women who genuinely desire, not because they were insufficient. They were just battling without the proper weapons today. I'll share the most effective methods that combine Stoic and dark psychology for the first time. Philosophy as a near-perfect combination of contemporary psychology techniques and traditional. The philosophical knowledge I'm about to impart isn't about shady tactics or the sophisticated art of comprehending and directing human emotions is called manipulation. After watching this film, I have to say that you will never view relationships the same way again. Once more, you'll begin to notice minor indicators that you've never seen before. Most significantly, you'll have the most effective weapons at your disposal to win over any woman you want, so be sure to watch this video until the end, since the last tactic I offer is the most important one that 99% of men never understand: the art of scarcity. Allow me to share the first and possibly the skill of limited supply. The art of scarcity, the most potent dark psychology principle, has a basic reality that most men are unaware of. We constantly yearn for things that are out of our reach. Readily available, consider the Hermes purse that ladies must wait a year to receive, or those people queue overnight for limited edition trainers. But it's not because these are far superior to others, merely due to their scarcity. But here's the interesting bit. The majority of guys use the exact opposite approach when using this idea to attract women. They are constantly available when she needs them to respond to her texts right away and voluntarily cancel all of her arrangements. To meet her, they question why, as the Stoic philosophers taught us, she doesn't think they're unique. Marcus Aurelius once observed, "A man's worth is rarely valued when it comes easily, is determined by the quality of the time he spends with others rather than the amount of time he spends with them." So how do we apply this principle? First and foremost, you must deliberately build a truly valuable life. Don't pretend to. When a woman texts you instead, be busy and truly involved in worthwhile activities. Rather than replying right away with what you're doing, logically wait till you. Actually, I have time to respond and apologize. I just got out of a meeting with partners. Now, the value behind that delay second is more important than the delay itself. Instead of focusing on quantity, build quality experiences with carefully thought-out dates. Has greater significance and surprises than 7 routine meetings. I once had a client who used to see he liked the woman practically every day, having informal lunches and coffee. After my advice, he cut back on hangouts to once a week, but he still attended every meeting. Amazing outcome. She couldn't stop imagining their next meeting, and this is the most important. When using the scarcity principle, it never seems like intentional creation. The goal of distance dark psychology is to actually develop relationships, not to pretend. Your worth so that your limited supply becomes organic and valuable. Music. As an example, one of my clients had been pursuing a woman for 6 years. After applying this idea for months without any results, he began concentrating on his career advancement, hobbies, and only got to know her when he was able to offer high quality. Within 3 weeks of the outcome, she was the one. Persistently vying for his attention, keep in mind that the objective is to gain value rather than become unreachable. Pursuing the Stoic idea of self-worth combined with the dark psychology concept of scarcity Produce an alluring air that attracts women to you organically, only the first principle, and its strength is already apparent to you. But wait till you learn about the second method, which is even more effective when paired with the two things we just learnt: the power of determined indifference. Let me share with you one of the most potent yet surprising ideas: deliberate indifference. Being frigid isn't the goal of dark psychology's skill of deliberate indifference, or heartless. It's about realizing a basic aspect of human nature. Epicurus once stated that the Stoics learnt years ago that anyone who is excessively, this age-old advice aptly captures how someone who is too focused on his own life will become a slave to the feelings of others, corresponds with what contemporary psychology teaches us about desire and attraction. Let me share a story about Michael. He was totally committed in every response and communication from one of my most recent clients. Every tiny shift in the woman's tone, if she delayed an hour to respond to his, if she appeared less enthused, his day would be shattered. And you know what would happen? Occurred. This is why this approach is effective. The more he cared, the less she did. Strongly, when you demonstrate that your emotional state is entirely reliant on another person, you implicitly convey that you are less valuable. But when you remain emotionally stable given their behavior, you exhibit a great deal of personal power. Allow me to show you how to use this. Successfully implement the Stoic discipline of emotional. When it takes her hours to respond, instead of waiting impatiently, focus on your own. When she appears aloof, keep your cool and keep in mind that you're actually concentrating on your own value and not acting indifferent. I use the mirror response as a strong tool with my clients. Approach whatever emotional investment she makes, reflect it back at the precise. If she responds with a single word, you reply at the same level, no more, no less. Likewise, you can match her energy if she writes a passionate paragraph. But this is where dark psychology comes in. Periodically, purposefully breaks this pattern by adding an extra layer when she anticipates that you will be. When she anticipates distance, she displays nonchalant indifference. Warmth, which produces a compulsive ambiguity that keeps her contemplating. I saw this work done significantly with James, another customer, who used to overanalyze each exchange with his crush after applying strategic apathy. An intriguing thing occurred. The less he appeared to be impacted by her behavior, the more she started looking for his approval. But this is important. It's not about playing games. About actually getting to the point where your sense of fulfillment and value are independent of other people's acts. As Seneca suggested, the most potent force we possess is the ability of disregard for what exists outside of our own minds. Yet consider this: appealing somebody whose whole emotional universe centers around your every action, or someone who would adore to have you in their lives, but are perfectly happy without you. This idea gains much more potency when combined with our next method, which I'll explain to you shortly. But first allow me to warning. After you become proficient at this, you'll need to apply the power of calculated. Both you and those impacted by it may get addicted to indifference. 3. Developing value perception. Let me share with you one of the most intriguing ideas in dark art: the art of producing perceived value. This isn't about psychology, the art of generating perceived value, pretending to be someone you're not. Rather, it's about displaying your own value in a way that makes sense. The ancient Stoics had a profound understanding of this idea, as demonstrated by Marcus Aurelius's nearly irresistible appeal. Stated that a man's worth is found in what he does, not in what he displays to other people. Can do, but dark psychology adds a significant twist here, that it's not simply about your abilities, but let me tell you about how you display those abilities. Despite his accomplishments, Alex, a prominent lawyer, came to me feeling frustrated. His issue was that he was too eager to keep women's attention. showcase his achievements, and list them as though they were on a CV. I gave him a valuable lesson. Here's how to grasp the idea that mystery adds value. Let someone discover your success instead of telling them about it. Rather than discussing your promotion, let her overhear you having a crucial business call. The dark psychology component here is that your exercise regimen allowed her to observe your self-control through your behavior. Is important because people respect what they learn more than what they are told. A woman's feelings are strengthened when she discovers something remarkable about you on her own. Impact compared to just telling her. But this is where it really gets. It's intriguing how the Stoic habit of downplaying your accomplishments actually increases their impact when you do something noteworthy, but discuss it in a humble manner. It establishes a fascinating gap that piques curiosity. I once dealt with a client who was a self-made millionaire. His typical strategy was to ensure that everyone understood his value, which I trained him to accomplish. Opposed to concentrating discussions on other people and demonstrating sincere interest in their tales in order to solely disclose his achievements. And when he was asked directly about the outcome, people were captivated by him. Always attempting to learn more about his enigmatic accomplishment, here's a potent method instead of promoting knowledge about yourself, teach the value vacuum. Create circumstances that compel people to inquire about you when they must put in the effort to understand your worth. Remember to appreciate it more, though, as this is where a lot of men make mistakes. Isn't about lying. All of the value you offer must be sincere, just like Seneca stated that while the truth will remain, the false will falter. The art is not in producing false value, but the most effective way to deliberately show your actual value idea is how it has a domino effect when people think they treat you differently because they value you, and others notice this, which further enhances your sense of worth. It's a vicious loop that, once initiated, creates amazing appeal. But here's the important warning. Enormous power comes with huge. When this technique is perfected, it can create such a powerful attraction that you must exercise caution. How you use it, as what I'll be sharing next, makes this idea even more. Strong number 4 is fostering psychological dependence, and we're currently dependency on the mind, exploring one of dark psychology's most potent domains, the craft of making. This isn't about toxic manipulation, rather, it's about psychological dependency. Knowing and applying the deep psychological patterns that establish enduring emotional connections allows me to offer a fundamental reality that blends contemporary psychology with ancient wisdom. People don't connect through continuous enjoyment, but consider the rhythmic dance of certainty and ambiguity, presence and absence. The most captivating smartphone games that don't continuously reward you provide you with just enough to keep you interested while constantly promising something. Additionally, the same idea holds true for emotional attachment, but with far more power. Allow me to introduce you to David, a recent client who was ideal. Boyfriend who is always available, affectionate and encouraging, but because there was no emotional connection, the girlfriend appeared to lose interest over time. Contrast, no mental strain and no room for desire to develop. Here's how to learn this concept first, then produce what I refer to as emotional peaks and troughs. When you are really there, paying close attention and producing moments that will stick in your memory, yet then use real focus to establish strategic distance rather than games. On your own life and objectives, just like the Stoics taught us. The gloomy psychology element here will eventually be broken by that constant stretching. It's important for people to stop being psychologically reliant on those who are constantly, but on individuals who produce unforgettable moments and then make room for. here's a potent method I teach for longing: emotional time. When you're with her, dilatation creates the illusion that time is passing more quickly through lively discussion and activities. Make time seem longer when you're separated by allowing her to think about you. Yet this is where a lot of men make mistakes. They attempt to artificially enforce this pattern in order to recall what Epicurus taught. No man is free unless he is in control of himself. Your absence must be made up. Having a sincere desire for personal excellence rather than just playing games. Worked with a customer who, by applying this idea rather of messaging his partner, improved their relationship. He would have one intensely interesting conversation per day, and in the evening, the expectation of these conversations turned into a highlight of her day. This principle's most potent feature is how it fosters a pleasant feedback loop. When someone begins to feel drawn to you on a psychological level, they start making greater emotional investments, which strengthens their commitment to the partnership. So increasing their psychological dependence, but the important taking ethics into account, this power carries a lot of responsibility. By using this, you're interacting with someone's psychological well-being rather than only toying with their emotions. Understanding to establish wholesome, mutually beneficial relationships rather than to control or harm. And what I'm about to say next strengthens this idea even further, because it addresses the most fundamental human need of all five: the ability to read and reading and taking charge of psychology. What I'm about to discuss may be the most advanced principle in leading psychology to date. Dark psychology is the skill of interpreting and guiding someone's psychological state, combines with Stoic observation to produce a potent tool for comprehending and gently guiding others. Let me tell you something. Most guys are unaware of the infrequent behaviors of women, correspond with their statements, not because they are lying, but rather because human mind works on a number of levels, as the Stoics noted that men are disturbed by their own view of things. James, a client of mine, was continuously perplexed by his love interests gave conflicting signals. She would claim to require space, but would later distance herself. She would say she wanted someone confident, yet, when he delivered it to her, seems drawn to vulnerable moments. The issue wasn't her faltering, but rather his incapacity to read the more profound psychological currents, to learn how to use this idea. First, cultivate what I refer to as psychological sight, rather than hearing what people suggest, to observe what causes their pupils to dilate and what results in tiny manifestations of interest in the factors that cause these unconscious messages to cause minute variations in voice tone. Never lie. Allow me to introduce you to a potent technique called the echo method. When you observe if someone is experiencing a certain emotional state, gently reflect that back to them. If they're introspective, modify their intensity a little to meet their excitement. Your tone appropriately, but now comes the important part. After you've matched them, gradually lead. The dark psychology component here is getting them to go where you want them to. When you show an instinctive understanding of them, fascinating people are more receptive to your suggestions. Understanding of someone's emotional state, they will inevitably start to mimic your emotional. I gave this lesson to a client who was having trouble with a woman who appeared emotionally unpredictable. I taught him to study the underlying patterns he discovered rather than responding to her outward feelings, that her rage and seeming coldness were frequently tests of her emotional stability, sometimes concealed weakness. But this is where Stoic wisdom comes in handy. The best way to deal with rage is, sometimes reading psychology is understanding when to not respond at all, as quiet taught Seeker. However, the most effective movements in this game are frequently the ones you forget, and this is, ridding is a vital ability, but it also carries a great deal of responsibility. you have a great deal of control over someone's emotional state. Instead of manipulating, the world uses its power to foster understanding and connections. What I refer to as psychological chess is the most sophisticated use of this idea. It allows one to read not simply current emotional states, but to predict emotional responses a few steps in advance. This is where real mastery lies. But be careful. What I'm going to say next makes this idea even more potent, since it addresses the subconscious impulses that even the most self-aware individual is unable to. Let me present to you the power of strategic quiet in Resist number 6. Strategic quietness. Dark psychology's most underappreciated tool is the strategic silence is more than just remaining silent. It's also about realizing the psychological strain that silence causes. The Stoics were profoundly aware of this when it was applied with precision. As Marcus, it's better to say nothing than to speak darkly and aimlessly, according to Aurelius. Psychology elevates this knowledge to a whole new level. Allow me to present an eye-opening example. One of my most prosperous clients, Michael, used to occupy every second of tension with words. When a woman expressed skepticism about him, he would explain himself in great detail. Away, he would be inundated with calls and messages, but I gave him the most potent lesson that transformed everything. Answer is frequently none at all, which is why this operates at such a profound level. Humans are meaning-making machines on a psychological level. Therefore, when we remain silent, over time, minds fill that gap with meaning, which results in what I refer to as psychological echo, in which people are compelled to face their own my feelings and ideas concerning you. Allow me to show you how to grasp this idea. Recognize the 3 categories of strategic silence. Response, silence first. When people anticipate a quick response, there is stillness when you're physically there. Yet when you momentarily vanish, there is still emotional distance and quiet. The strength of their radar resides in understanding just which kind to utilize, and I saw a client once change a woman's attention by just not answering a moderately dismissive. Her remark and his silence said a lot, and within hours she was reaching out to see how he would respond. But this is where Stoicism and dark psychology collide. Wisdom. You must be silent out of strength rather than weakness, as Epicurus instructed. Occurs to you, but how you respond to it, whether you decide to keep quiet about it or not, is what counts. The most potent decision should be made consciously rather than emotionally. The vacuum effect is a method I teach when someone emotionally begs for your attention, or reaction produces a purposeful void, and this void will frequently draw them into your circle more powerfully than words could. But this is important. Like a sharp blade, strategic quiet must be utilized with precision. It can be a lethal weapon or a strong tool that, when used improperly, can cause harm. When utilized properly, it can generate powerful partnerships that last a lifetime. With my clientele, I've witnessed the power of attraction and respect. One man was interacting with a woman who was always pushing his limits rather than sharing her feelings with him. Games that taught him to react with measured quiet, which led to the outcome she started. She treated him with a respect that no one else could recall. But this isn't about being aloof. Or ultimately, it's about realizing that, when used wisely, your quiet may say more than any. As they say, nobody ever regrets not saying something. But the intriguing part is that what I'm going to discuss next strengthens this idea even further, since it addresses how to end the silence in a way that maximizes the impact of number 7, control authority through liberty freedom. Allow me to introduce you to the most advanced idea in the art of control through perceived freedom, is the point at which Stoicism and dark psychology combine to their greatest extent. People are drawn to the biggest paradox in human psychology, the ability to use wisdom to create something genuinely strong. Freedom, yet they are most drawn to things they believe they cannot completely control. Allow me to demonstrate how to achieve this fine balance. I worked with a Robert, the client, was unable to comprehend why ladies continued to distance themselves from him in spite of his intense emotions. His issue for them was that he attempted to manage all of their time and focus. Their choices. I imparted to him a contradictory lesson that real power originates from. This is the idea in action, granting freedom but retaining authority. Say, I'm free Friday evening rather than let's meet Friday at 8. And on Tuesday of next week, you still have control over what suits you best. However, she believes she is making the decision. This is what I refer to as led. The paradox of freedom was well grasped by the Stoics, and Seneca penned the best. The ability to free people is power, but here is where dark psychology comes in. Adds a vital component when you grant someone freedom, which they frequently decide to remain nearer than if you attempted to hold them. Allow me to explain a potent method I call, when you feel someone slipping away rather than tightening your grip, the freedom bond grasp, greatly increase their freedom. I know you need room. Spend as much time as necessary determining your goals. This frequently produces a psychological boomerang effect. The more freedom you grant them, the more they want to stay. But this is the important part. Must be sincere. As Marcus Aurelius taught, you cannot feign detachment. Being different from the one who caused the hurt when you genuinely embrace giving is the best kind of retaliation. Freedom gives you a power that controlling behavior could never have. I've witnessed this change relationships time and time again. One client was coping with the more he attempted to gain commitment from a woman who was commitment phobic, when he discovered how to truly accept her freedom, she protested even more. Interestingly, she started asking him for commitment. Keep in mind that this isn't manipulation, but people favor their free will over their forced choices when they have a thorough comprehension of human psychology. Acknowledge that by grasping this idea, you develop a kind of influence that is considerably more potent than govern the most cutting-edge application, which I refer to as choice architecture. Create circumstances where people are free to choose what they want, not because you force them to, but because you understand and in line with their innate tendencies. But be warned, this idea necessitates a great deal of emotional. If you're merely acting like you're mature, you need to be willing to let go. People will see your inauthenticity if you are free, yet inside need control. This is where our journey begins. When you integrate all 7 of these ideas, you come full circle. Scarcity to freedom, you establish an almost irresistible presence. Because you're attempting to exert authority or influence, but because you comprehend and deal with the most profound patterns of considering human psychology and memory, enormous power comes with great responsibility. Apply these guidelines to build sincere bonds and constructive relationships rather than to control or hurt, since genuineness paired with other qualities is ultimately the most appealing attribute. Conclusion and concluding recommendations. As we come to the conclusion of this exploration of Stoic wisdom and dark psychology, allow me to offer something. The lessons I've taught you are significant. They're not only about getting ladies, they're about comprehending the most human psychological patterns, applying them wisely, and purpose. Consider where you were at the start of this video. Maybe you were having trouble understanding why your best attempts didn't seem to be working, and the women you wanted didn't seem interested. Now you've learnt the art of scarcity, which is far more useful than simple procedures. The power of the ability to generate perceived worth by controlled indifference, the mastery of the ability to read and lead psychology, psychological reliance, and power of calculated quiet, followed by the sophisticated art of control through freedom. But keep in mind one important fact: enormous power comes with immense accountability. These values can sometimes be nearly too effective. I've observed men change from being totally invisible to women to having nearly excessive control over them. For this reason, the Stoic factor is extremely important, because it keeps you morally centered and focused on real. Let me give one last case study, James, that focuses on connection rather than manipulation. In addition to using these ideas to draw in the woman he wanted, my most prosperous client utilized them to create a mutual respect and a connection of true depth. When I asked him the key to, I stopped attempting to make her after he mentioned something significant about his achievement. Want me? And began turning into a desirable person, which is the core of all of the topics we covered today, including these dark psychology concepts demonstrate the workings of human attraction, while Stoic wisdom instructs you on how to. Before I conclude this video, let's implement this knowledge in an ethical and efficient manner. I want to give you one last warning. The information I gave you today is powerful. Use it carefully. Morally and most significantly, use it to establish real connections rather than merely. For those of you who are interested in learning more about these principles, I will be releasing an advanced series shortly, so be sure to press the bell and subscribe so you don't miss it. The methods I'll share in that series make today's discussion seem simple in contrast, but keep in mind that real power isn't about self-awareness, self-control, and comprehending other people, and the intricate dance of human psychology I appreciate you seeing, and I hope to see you in the next film.